After years of emotional labor, my husband finally realized I'm not his mother, but only after I stopped caring. I think it started on that random Wednesday night, but honestly, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when everything began unraveling. I was in the kitchen, doing what I always do, cooking dinner while my husband, let's call him A, sat on the couch, glued to the TV. This wasn't unusual. For years, I had been doing the lion's share of everything around the house: cleaning, cooking, managing finances, even remembering his family's birthdays. Shit that he should have been able to handle as a grown-ass man. But that night, something just snapped in me. I was standing over the stove, stirring a pot of spaghetti, and suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. The frustration, the exhaustion, the sheer fucking loneliness. I felt it all at once, and it was like a dam broke inside me. I slammed the spoon down on the counter, and before I could even think, I was storming into the living room. "Do you even see me, A? Like, actually see me?" I spat out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. He looked up from the TV, confused, as if I had interrupted some grand event. "What the hell are you talking about?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. That only made me angrier. "I'm not your fucking mother, A!" I yelled, my voice echoing through the house. "I'm your wife, not your goddamn caretaker. I'm done with this shit." He just stared at me, his face slowly morphing from confusion to irritation. "What's your problem now? I work all day. I deserve to relax when I get home," he said, as if that justified everything. "You work all day," I scoffed, incredulous. "And what do you think I do? Do you think this house just runs itself? Do you think dinner just magically appears on the table every night?" "You know, I'm tired, A. I'm so fucking tired of being your maid, your chef, your everything. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one in this marriage." His response? A fucking shrug. He shrugged, like what I was saying didn't even matter. "Well, if you're so tired, why don't you just take a break?" he said, turning back to the TV. That was it for me. I knew then that things weren't just bad, they were broken, and they had been for a long time. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just turned around and walked out of the room, my mind racing with thoughts of how I had ended up here. In the days that followed, I decided to take his shitty advice and take a break. But not in the way he meant. I stopped doing everything. I didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't do his laundry. I figured if he wanted to live like a bachelor, then fine. He could see what that was really like. At first, he didn't even notice. He still came home expecting a hot meal, only to find the kitchen dark and cold. I'd be sitting at the dining table, eating takeout, scrolling through a magazine. He'd come in, look around, and just sigh, but he didn't say anything. A few days later, the mess started piling up. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes strewn across the bedroom floor, trash overflowing. I could tell it was getting to him, but his pride or stubbornness wouldn't let him admit it. Instead, he'd grumble under his breath, slamming cupboard doors and muttering about how someone should do something about the mess, but that someone wasn't going to be me, not anymore. Finally, after almost a week, he cracked. He came home from work one night, looking more stressed than I'd seen him in a long time. The kitchen was a disaster, the living room a mess, and he just stood there, taking it all in. "What the hell is going on, OP?" he demanded, his voice tight with frustration. I looked up from the couch, where I was reading a book, and raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "This! All of this!" He gestured wildly around the room. "Why isn't anything done? Why is the house such a fucking pigsty?" I closed my book and set it aside, meeting his gaze with a calm I didn't even know I had. "Because I'm done, A. I'm done being your mother. If you want a clean house, clean it yourself. If you want dinner, cook it yourself. I'm not your fucking servant." He stared at me, stunned, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're my wife, OP. This is your job," he exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief. "No, A," I replied, my voice steady. "My job is to be your partner, your equal, not your maid, not your mother. And if you can't understand that, then I don't know what we're even doing here. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross his face, but it was quickly replaced by anger. Fine, he snapped. If that's how you want it, then fine. I'll do it myself. And he did, for about 2 days, but it quickly became clear that he had no fucking idea how to take care of himself, let alone a house. The laundry piled up, the sink overflowed with dirty dishes, and the only thing in the fridge was a sad, half-empty carton of milk. I watched it all unfold with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because finally, he was seeing how much I had been doing all these years. But sadness because it shouldn't have come to this. We shouldn't have been in this mess to begin with. By the end of the second week, A was a wreck. He was barely sleeping, snapping at everything, and constantly stressed out. But still, he wouldn't admit that he needed help, or that I had been right all along. One night, I came home to find him sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by dirty dishes and half-eaten takeout containers. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. OP, I can't do this, he said, his voice breaking. I thought I could, but I can't. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so fucking fall. Let's fall. I knelt down beside him, my heart aching at the sight of him so defeated. But I couldn't let myself be pulled back into the same old cycle. What are you sorry for, eh? I asked, needing to hear him say it. For everything, he whispered. For taking you for granted. For not realizing how much you do. For treating you like this. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I'm not your mother, eh? I'm your wife, and I need you to start acting like a husband, not a child. He nodded, wiping at his face with the back of his hand. I know that now. I don't know how to fix this. I don't either, I admitted, my voice soft. But we have to try. If we want this to work, we have to try. For the first time in years, we talked. Really talked about everything. About how I had felt like I was carrying the entire weight of our marriage on my shoulders. About how he had felt overwhelmed and lost, but didn't know how to ask for help. We talked about our hopes, our fears, our frustrations, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Far from it. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of our marriage. We fought, we cried, we almost gave up, but we kept talking. And slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild what had been broken. As we worked on our marriage, things started to change. A began taking on more responsibility around the house. He started cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry, not because I asked him to, but because he wanted to. It wasn't perfect, and there were still days when I had to remind him to pick up after himself, but it was progress. One night, as we were sitting down to dinner, something he had cooked all by himself, he looked at me with a smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. I get it now, OP, he said, his voice filled with a sincerity that took me by surprise. Get what? I asked, curious. I get how much you've been doing for us, for me, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it, but I want you to know that I appreciate you. I really do. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but in the best way possible. I felt a warmth spread through me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. But I was also cautious. I'd heard words before. I needed to see actions. And to his credit, I didn't just talk the talk. He walked the walk. He started planning date nights, helping with the bills, and even taking over some of the mental load that had always fallen on me. It wasn't perfect, and we still had our ups and downs, but it was a hell of a lot better than where we had been. It's been a few months now, since that night in the kitchen, and things are different. Better, but different. I still have moments where I feel like I'm slipping back into old habits, but I'm more aware of it now, and so is A. We've had to redefine what our marriage looks like. It's not about one person doing everything while the other coasts by. It's about partnership, equality, and respect. And that's something we're both still learning. I won't lie and say that everything is perfect now. We still have our fights, our disagreements, but we're also better at communicating, at being honest with each other, and that's made all the difference. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I do know one thing. I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not his mother, and I refuse to play that role ever again. Update. It's been about a year since everything went down, and I wanted to give you all an update. And I are still together, and I'm happy to say that things have continued to improve. We've started going to couples counseling, which has been a game changer. It's helped us understand each other better and work through some of the deeper issues that we hadn't even realized were there. It hasn't been easy, and there have been times when we've both wanted to walk away, but we've stuck it out. A has really stepped up in a lot of ways. He's become more involved in the day-to-day running of the house, and he's taken on more of the emotional labor that I used to carry alone. It's not perfect, and there are still times when we fall into old patterns, but the difference now is that we recognize it, and we talk about it. We've also made more time for each other, which has helped us reconnect on a deeper level. We're not just living together, we're actually living as a couple, as partners, and that's made all the difference. I'm not saying that everything is fixed, or that we've reached some sort of perfect relationship, but we're both committed to making it work, and that's more than I could have said a year ago. So, I wasn't planning on making another update, but something big happened that I feel like I need to share. A few weeks ago, A sat me down and told me that he had been seeing a therapist on his own, outside of our couples counseling. At first, I was shocked. I had no idea he had been doing this, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. But as he explained, I realized just how much he had been struggling with his own issues that he hadn't felt comfortable talking to me about because he didn't want to burden me. He told me that he had been dealing with a lot of unresolved trauma from his childhood, which had contributed to the way he had been acting in our marriage. He hadn't realized how much it had affected him or how much it had influenced his behavior until he started therapy. Hearing him open up like that was both heartbreaking and reassuring. Heartbreaking because I hadn't realized how much pain he had been carrying around, but reassuring because it showed me that he was serious about changing, about becoming a better person, not just for me, but for himself. We're still working through everything, and I know it's going to take time, but I'm proud of him for taking that step, for recognizing that he needed help and doing something about it. It's a reminder that we're all a work in progress, and that's okay. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm hopeful, and that's something I haven't felt in a long time. It's been a roller coaster, but I think we're finally starting to find our groove. A and I have both grown so much over the past year, both individually and as a couple. We've learned to communicate better, to be more honest with each other, and to actually listen, really listen, when the other person is talking. We've also learned that it's okay to ask for help, whether that's from each other, from a therapist, or from friends and family. We're not in this alone, and that's made all the difference. I won't say that everything is perfect now, because that would be a lie. But we're in a much better place than we were, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're truly partners in this marriage. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that marriage is fucking hard work, but it's also worth it, if you're both willing to put in the effort. And I'm grateful that we both were. So, that's it. That's our story. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hopeful, and that's enough for me.